Hello, my name is Brittany Quickle from Chiaroscuro Tarot. I'm doing this live to share some more spiritual protection tips. This is part 2 of my spiritual protection tips for everyone, but this one in particular is also going to be especially applicable for you if you are also a folk magic practitioner, if you are also an indigenous shaman, if you are a psychic medium, if you're a witch, or if you're someone who already probably has a lot of spiritual protection rituals yourself. This is part 2 and a little bit more of an advanced spiritual protection. A few days ago, I did a live on spiritual protection, and I talked about how the spiritual world is kind of like the ocean, right? Because we're in this period right now in October where the spiritual world and the physical world have a lot more access to each other during this time. It's called the veil is thin, and the veil is always thin between the physical world and the spiritual world. For some reason, maybe it's because we're in the northern hemisphere and things are like the leaves are dying and decaying, but around the world, this is a very spiritually potent time where, again, the veil between the spiritual world and the physical world is very thin. I talked in my previous live about the vast, diverse, mysterious nature of the spiritual world and how it's like the ocean, right? On the surface, if you are a human being standing on land and you're looking at the ocean, you're just seeing the surface. But once you go beneath the surface, and maybe you are in the Nautilus submarine, for example, you're able to see this diversity of different creatures that are living in the ocean beneath the surface. And that's my big metaphor for what the spiritual world is. You might not believe that there's spirits and entities and ancestors and people who have passed away on the other side, deities, archangels. You might not believe in any of that, and this talk might not be for you, but whether or not you believe in something doesn't necessarily make it like not real. So I'm speaking from my own experience as an Italian American hereditary psychic medium and a spiritual folk magic practitioner who's drawing from not only my lived experiences, but also the lived experiences of the women in my family and the women in the community of my family, particularly the Italian American women in New Jersey, my cousins, my aunt, my Sicilian aunt, who I'm not Sicilian by blood, but I have Sicilian relatives through marriage. And it was my Sicilian aunt who taught me a lot of her folk magic practices. And her daughter, my cousin, we're in constant contact, and we have a lot of similar phenomena that we experience. And her grandmother we would call them a white witch, but that was just colloquially in the Italian American New Jersey community. There's different words for this in Italian depending on the region that you're in. Some people would say maga or mago or schiamana. Excuse my pronunciation because I'm learning Italian, but some people would even say strega. Strega is colloquially the way that I understand it. It's more negative connotation, meaning like a bad witch or like an old ugly hag. That's the context that I have come to know strega in from the old Fellini films that I watched too. But in English, in the Italian American New Jersey community, where I was born and raised, where my mom was born and raised, my grandparents, and the Italian American communities and Sicilian American communities that they grew up in, these are practices and these are like things that we know. So anyway, in my community, my mom taught me that certain women just are the person in their family or in their community who's known as a white witch. And What that means is that woman not only is a practitioner of Italian folk magic, which is a new term, but she's the person that can check for the Malocchio. My dialect of Sicilian that my aunt taught me is Maloica, but that basically these are women who, and it's almost always women. There are men who inherit these gifts, usually whether it's a man or a woman, it's through the maternal line. So that's where I've inherited my gifts. And a white witch is a good witch, quote unquote. She's also not someone that you should ever mess with because we know all different things. We know how to heal. We also know what causes the ailments, like the curses, the maloika, like all of these different things. We know both things. We know how to protect, defend, and we also know how to like heal, cleanse, bless, all of that. But in my community and my mother's community and the Italian American multiple communities and neighborhoods that I grew up in and that my parents grew up in, the white witch is the one that you go to when you want to know certain things, when you want to know like, hey, am I going to marry this guy, or just different things, not necessarily only for divination or fortune telling, but you would go to them for a wide variety of different things. And a huge part of Italian and Sicilian American folk magic is protection, like a focus on protection. This even goes beyond just people who practice Italian folk magic. And folk magic, again, is interwoven into the things that we do, the things that I grew up doing, the things that my Sicilian aunt does, that she taught me. These were just taught to me as like, these are important things that you do. And it also overlaps with culture, with religion, spiritual beliefs. I'm also Roman Catholic. I went to Catholic school when I was very young. So all of this overlaps. This is my background that I'm coming from, just so you know where I'm coming from. So anyway, that's a little bit about me, but I want to share some more spiritual protection tips to add on to the first live that I did, because I thought of some extra things that I think are important for everyone to know, whether or not you are of Italian or Sicilian descent, or if you're of any background. These are tips that really anybody can start to use for spiritual protection. And also some of these tips are going to be really useful for just physical protection in this world as well. A lot of spiritual protection is proactive. You don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're not protecting yourself on a regular basis, you're not cleansing, which is really an important part of protection. It's kind of like a prerequisite to doing any type of protection work, but cleansing is number one. Part of proactive spiritual protection to make sure you're just like protected all the time, no matter what, physically, spiritually, all of that, is to cleanse on a regular basis. So you're going to be cleansing your body, cleansing your space. This is really important. Like I'm talking like deep cleaning your house, your apartment, your space on a weekly basis. I like to do this on Saturday. Each day of the week corresponds to a certain planet and the energy of that planet. So Saturday is ruled by Saturn. This is a really good time to do any type of cleansing, organizing, cleaning stuff out, any type of errands that you have to run. But Saturday is the day when I cleanse my whole house and I deep clean. So I'm cleaning down all of the surfaces in my house, mopping the floor, doing a floor wash. A lot of these different things are also going to be prevalent in other spiritual practices from other parts of the world, especially any ones that are based in African spirituality or from the Caribbean. So we have a lot in common. I'm from New Jersey, outside of New York City. So these are other cultures that I have experience with, and I have learned a lot from their practices. And there's also an overlap with what I've learned in Italian and Sicilian folk magic as well. And every indigenous shamanic folk magic practice, cleaning is a core part of that. Just to explain for anybody, folk magic can be practiced by anyone. Indigenous shamanism is a term that refers to shamanic practices and traditions that are indigenous to a certain part of the world. So for me, I was born and raised in New Jersey, outside of New York City. However, where my gifts come from and where the practices that I learned come from is indigenous to what is now modern day Italy and also Sicily, because I learned practices from my Sicilian aunt. Even though I'm not Sicilian by blood, I'm Northern Italian. I like to honor both and make sure that I'm always saying these are Sicilian practices as well as Italian practices. So my gifts and my lineage is indigenous to Italy, even though I grew up in the United States, in New Jersey. So my experiences and my practices are different from what people are practicing in Italy, but there's a lot of diversity there as well. Cleansing is really important in any form of folk magic or indigenous shamanism anywhere in the world. I don't care where you're from. If you're not cleansing your house on a regular basis and you're doing any type of stuff with the spiritual world, you're asking for trouble. Cleansing is a core prerequisite to making sure that you are protected. So cleansing your house, really important. I recommend doing this at least once a week, deep clean, if not twice a week. But making sure that all of the spaces, the physical surfaces of your space are clean. Also making sure that you don't have a lot of clutter in your space. And this also is very prevalent in feng shui, which is a Chinese philosophy of space and energy, how you coexist in harmony with your space, and making sure that your space is set up for optimal energy flow and that it's set up intentionally for that reason. So cleansing is really important. Just physically cleansing your space and also making sure that there's not a lot of clutter in your space either. You don't want to have the closet full of shit or corners that are just like a bunch of stuff all piled together that you don't even know what's in there. And I am just saying from experience, I used to be one of those people. I grew up with parents who are working class. They grew up poor. They're not like hoarders, but they save lots of different things. And I grew up with a certain level of clutter that I ended up doing. And in the last few years, since I've gotten really serious about my own spiritual practices, we're done with the clutter. I know where everything is in my space, and everything has a place and everything has a purpose, and there's no weird energy that's shoved in corners. And I say that because in a lot of traditions of indigenous shamanism around the world, negative energy can get stuck in corners or dirty spaces. Don't ask me how this happens. You don't want any type of negative energy or negative entities getting stuck in certain places where there's lots of clutter and dirt. You need to clean that energy out. So this is your excuse to go deep clean, declutter, donate things that you're not using. If there's anything in your house that's broken, get rid of it. Either fix it or get rid of it. Don't keep broken things around in your space. Unless it's like, this thing broke and I'm gonna keep these parts because I'm Italian American and I might need this weird thing for something. If that's the case, then make a space for it and be like, okay, this is my recyclable containers cabinet, and have it as organized as possible. Make sure that each thing has a space and not just a bunch of clutter shoved in a corner. Okay, so cleansing your space is really important, making sure that it's clean and there's no clutter and like weird, dark, dingy corners and spaces, because this is true in a multitude of different traditions, especially Eastern traditions. Anywhere in the world, these spirits, these negative, lower energy is really attracted to dark, dingy corners. So just clean all that stuff out. Somebody asked, I have a problem with my husband wanting to throw away anything that I keep, like little hobgoblin. Yeah, ask yourself, like, am I really gonna need this? And also do some reflection on, like, do I think that I might need this one day, so I'm gonna save it? Like, that's my form of reusing and recycling. A lot of people saw the video that I posted that I totally didn't know was gonna have so many people comment on it, but I posted a reel about how I reused a plastic container that I got from the J&S pork store that I was reusing for like a sea salt scrub. I'm reusing a plastic container that I could either recycle and throw in the recycling, or I'm choosing to keep it, wash it, clean it, reuse it for leftovers or certain things. So asking yourself, like, am I really gonna use this? Of course, you never know. That's why we keep certain things that we can reuse and recycle. But just being intentional about certain things. If it's broken, throw it out or fix it. So cleanse your space, declutter your space, be intentional about what is physically in your space. Now, with that being said, you want to be careful about what you bring into your space. So if anything gives you bad vibes, I'm really into thrift shopping. I love to go to thrift stores. I just love the energy of certain things, and you find really unique, cool things. My parents were really into antiquing, like going to antique stores and just looking around. Well, you want to be careful, especially with antiques, of what you bring into your space. So if anything, if you're ever thrift shopping, going to a flea market, going to any place where there's items that are antiques or that other people owned, you just want to be really intentional about what you're bringing into your space. If it gives you bad vibes, don't bring it home. If you look at it and you're like, ugh, okay, I'm gonna grab it. Don't do that. Also, if you bring something into your home, especially if it's an antique, it's an old thing that belonged to somebody else, you don't know where it came from, you don't know what happened in the space where it came from, and bad things start happening, or all of a sudden the energy shifts and it's like bad vibes, get rid of it. Go bring it somewhere else. When I was growing up in New Jersey, my neighbor, she was Italian American. She brought home a antique rocking chair one time, and it started rocking by itself. And then she had to call up her local Italian American white witch who she knew to come to the house and be like, yeah, you need to get rid of that. I don't know if there was like a spirit attached to it. Maybe there was someone who passed away and they were really attached to this rocking chair. Maybe it was some other type of ghost spirit, because negative entities attach to people, they don't attach to things, even though there's this whole, oh, is it a haunted doll or whatever. If there's a inanimate object and it's got some really weird vibes, it's probably a type of a ghost or some type of a spirit that maybe wasn't an actual person that has passed away. Now we're getting into like paranormal land. I could go on about all of this. I'm just giving tips for everybody to keep in mind. So if something gives you bad vibes, don't buy it and bring it home. Even if it looks cool or you're like, wow, that's a cool piece of furniture, but something about it is like, or you bring it home and weird stuff starts happening, or you have really bad luck or whatever, get rid of it. Somebody asked opinions on Ouija boards. I'm totally into all of the antiquing. Yeah, I mean, you could be into antiquing, that's fine. Just be really discerning about what you bring home with you, because you want to bring like a haunted ghost in a rocking chair with you. You know what I mean? The other thing I'll say is that even goes for objects and things that you bring into your home that you bought that are new. It's a good practice, in my practice, when you bring things home, to cleanse them. Depending on what it is, you can wash it with soap and water and just give it a cleanse as you're bringing it into your house. Because energy is real, and somebody could have touched the thing that you brought home and they were having a really bad day, or they had really bad energy, it got stuck to them. That's not as common. And again, if you're cleansing your space on a regular basis and you're cleansing yourself, that's not really going to be an issue for you. But something that's an old antique that has a lot of history, has a lot of energy. You don't know what space it was coming from. You don't know what happened in that space. You don't know what kind of people were in that space, what kind of like energy was in that space. You want to be careful with, especially antique mirrors. So mirrors are portals in and out of the spiritual world. Mirrors are very powerful objects that you can use for certain types of magic. There's a whole part of magic called mirror magic where you literally use a mirror to do certain things, but mirrors are portals. So be really careful about antique mirrors. I'm not saying that you can't buy them, but just make sure you get really good vibes from them. And when you bring it into your home, you should definitely clean it with whatever cleaner is appropriate for it. And I would also recommend using holy water to cleanse a mirror as well. Also, with your weekly cleaning of your space, clean the mirrors in your space. Make sure you're like wiping them down and you're keeping all the mirrors in your house clean, whether they're antiques or not. But in terms of antiquing, be extra careful about mirrors, bringing home mirrors. Anything that's wood holds energy, but just if it gives you weird vibes, keep it at the antique store. Are you coming from an animistic perspective? Yeah, to an extent. That's part of my Italian folk magic, has a mystic aspects to it. It might not be the same way that someone else views their animistic perspective, but everything has an energy that's really prevalent, especially also in Eastern traditions of spirituality. That's in feng shui. That's why everything should have its own space, and every object has an energy to it. But I'm also talking about how other energy can be absorbed from objects, right? So for example, while you're cleansing and decluttering your space, let's say you dated someone and then you broke up with them and you have gifts that they gave you or any objects that were like really personal to them. That has an energy to it, right? That gift that person gave you, there's memories attached to it. There's energy, maybe an emotional reaction that you get when you look at it or you touch it. So for example, if that's a person from your past that you broke up with them, you're done with them, you may want to either donate that item or throw it out if that's appropriate. Part of cleansing your space and spiritually protecting yourself proactively is making space for new things to come into your life. So try not to hold on to old energy or stagnant energy. That's why you don't want to keep things that are broken. You just want to make sure that everything has its end, that you're intentional about everything that's in your space and everything that you're bringing into your space. So Ouija boards, I don't recommend Ouija boards, especially if you're new to anything in the spiritual realm or witchy, spooky stuff. I wouldn't recommend Ouija boards unless you really know what you're doing and you really have a strong spiritual protection routine and you are experienced, you know what you're doing. But if you're just like, I want to get spooked out and I just want to see what happens, no, Ouija boards don't recommend. Like literally don't do that. That's dangerous because you're opening up a portal to you don't know what, honestly. And if you're not able to spiritually protect yourself in a really powerful way, like you're already an expert practitioner and you have a high level of spiritual protection practices, I 10 out of 10 do not recommend Ouija boards. I would recommend if you want to do some type of divination, I would recommend getting a tarot deck, because that's not the same thing. If you want to get into using tarot as a tool for either divination or for your own self-reflection, or you just want to get to know the tarot cards, I don't recommend Ouija boards at all. When I was in college, I've always been a witch. I've always been very intuitive and I've always been into the paranormal, supernatural stuff. But when I was in college, I lived with 3 other girls who were all Italian American, and we had a party. We were with our guy friends, And for some weird reason, maybe it was around Halloween, I don't know, they decided to make their own Ouija board with cardboard, writing in a Sharpie the letters. And then we used a shot glass as the thing that we all had our hands on. And I was like, guys, I don't think we should do this, but I was outnumbered. And then I was also kind of curious and interested. So we were like talking to some spirit that whatever claimed that he used to farm on the land where our apartment was in upstate New York in college. Like, who the hell knows? But one thing that I will always remember that freaked me out was we were not in my apartment. We were in somebody else's apartment. And because I was vehemently against us doing that in our own apartment because I knew that's not good. So we're talking to this spirit. Who the hell knows even what it was, if it was a ghost, if it was like whatever. It's probably was a ghost. And I know I'm saying these things without like full-blown context, but that's just my personal professional opinion. So we're like talking to this ghost with the shot glass on the homemade Ouija board, and there's at least 8 to 10 of us with our finger on the shot glass at that point. And I remember I was sitting like here, and it was like all the way over there. It was a pretty big table that we were all sitting around, this cardboard. Now you need to keep in mind, like cardboard with a shot glass on top of it, that's hard to move around. Like the actual Ouija board's a lot smoother. It has that specific thing. So I remember towards the end, we were gonna wrap up, and the shot glass is like all the way over there. I'm sitting here, and we ask, so where are you gonna go after this? The shot glass slides off the table. Like they all had their hands on it, and it was like, boom, like slides off all the way across the table, and the shot glass lands in my lap. And I'm like, we're done here. I just remember immediately knowing, oh no. like when you go to Disney World or Disneyland and you go on the Haunted Mansion and they're like, and a ghost will follow you home. That was like my, oh shit, like why does it have to be me? Okay, I know I'm the girl that watched all the ghost shows growing up, and I didn't really know I was a full-blown witch at the time, but I was just like, oh shit. Like, what? And then a few days later, I vehemently made it pretty clear to my roommates in college, like, don't ever do the Ouija board in this apartment. I don't care if I'm home. I don't care if I'm not home. I was home and I was sleeping, and they decided late one night, let's do the homemade Ouija board again in my apartment, this time while I was sleeping. And after that, me and all my roommates had 2 weeks of intense bad luck, specifically with like technology messing up. We all went to college for sign language interpreting, and this is back between 2010 and 2012. So we all had to record videos of our homework, and we were having all these problems trying to video record our homework. We would like record a whole 30-minute video, and then we go to save it, and then it would be deleted. And this was stuff that was happening at college, which was not far away. We lived nearby to the campus, but we all had these serious problems. We would all come home from every day for those 2 weeks, and we'd be like, yo, all this crazy stuff is happening. We'd have fights with our boyfriends and stuff. And it got to a point after 2 weeks of this, and we all felt like shit. Like all these different things were going wrong. And this one day, like it was, I don't remember if it was during the day or if it was a night, when all 3 of my roommates were out of the house, and I was like, that's it. I'm fucking doing something. I'm gonna do a cleanse like my Sicilian aunt taught me, and I took holy water and I just went around the whole apartment and opened all the windows, and I was like, yo, you need to get the fuck out of here. Whatever this is, whatever this ghost from the Ouija board, you're done. This is done. Get the hell out. And then our problems were over. And something about that worked. And I give myself credit because I didn't know what I was really doing back then. I just knew like intuitively, like, okay, my aunt taught me these things, so I'm going to do this. And it was like my baby's first low-key exorcism. Not really a full-blown exorcism, but it was like, all right, get out of here. You're not welcome. But I do not recommend that. Somebody said I've always been a witch too, just kept it to myself because of my super Catholic Italian family. Yeah, you're totally not alone, even though the Catholics be doing all kinds of witchy stuff. But everybody has their own perspectives on that. But yeah, you're not alone. I was just saying how spiritualism is real too. I'm also from Rochester, the birthplace movement. I went to college in Rochester. That's where I went to school. So that's where that Ouija board experience happened. We'll have to talk more about that. That's really interesting. So you want to be really mindful of what you're bringing into your house. Ouija boards, I don't recommend it. I just don't. I also don't recommend like DIY, random seance, unless you're someone who you know what you're doing. If you don't, you just hold off on that. You can always learn more. What I'm sharing here is like basic protection tips for anybody. So cleanse your space, declutter your space, cleanse your body on a regular basis. We need to be doing this hygienically for our physical well-being, but it's also really important spiritually as well. So spiritual protection with your body, cleansing your body on a regular basis, taking showers every day. I would recommend that every day, honestly, if not multiple times a day. It's up to you. You don't need to go crazy, but you should be washing your physical body on a regular basis, especially if you're feeling not great, like you're feeling low energy, you're struggling with depression, anxiety. That's one of the signs and symptoms. If somebody's really struggling, sometimes they can really struggle to take a shower or take a bath. So I recommend that on a regular basis, like every day. You got to be doing that because it's also cleansing your spiritual, energetic aura at the same time too. So physical protection, spiritual protection, don't let just anybody touch your physical body. Your body is a sacred vessel for your soul and your spirit. You really want to be careful with where you physically put yourself, where you go in certain spaces, but don't let anybody touch you. Ever since I learned more about this, I used to be someone who was totally cool shaking hands. I used to work in a lot of different places and be meeting a lot of new people for the first time for my job, and used to shake hands with lots of people. Sometimes I used to be a hugger, like I would hug people. Now I don't do that anymore. I'm really conservative. Like I don't even shake hands. Now I work from home now because that works for me. Don't let anyone touch your jewelry either. Yeah, especially not your protective spiritual jewelry. And washing your hands regularly, absolutely. But don't let people just touch your body, and especially don't let people touch your head. Your head is very important in some practices, including in Italian and Sicilian practices. Sometimes you veil your head in certain spaces. Some people wear a veil all the time. Some people just wear it when they go to church, or maybe when they're going to a place where there's going to be lots of people. Sometimes I will wear a veil in certain situations, but it's not something that I do all the time because I practice a lot of like protection so that I'm good all the time and it's not really dependent on what I'm wearing. But don't let just anybody touch you, and don't let just anybody touch your head. Your head is a precious part of your body, and you don't want to let anybody touch you, your body, and especially not your head. And since COVID too, I've become way more of a germaphobe since going through that while I was living in New York City. So cleansing your space, cleansing your body, not letting anybody or anything into your space into your physical body. If somebody's giving me bad vibes, I'm not letting them touch me, and I'm not gonna hug them either. And that's something I had to develop working in the old job that I worked. Some people, like, they wanted to hug me at work, and I was like, no, like, I would, like, physically put a barrier between me and them and step back and be like, okay, but I don't really care. I care more about my own protection than being nice. I'm kind, but some people might not think I'm nice in certain situations, but I care about my space, my bubble. This is my space, and I'm going to respect your space, and that's that. Because you really don't know what kind of energy people got, and that's a real thing that was part of my Italian and Sicilian folk magic practices. Like, people have energy, and sometimes I've definitely experienced being with certain people or in certain spaces and then getting sick when I get home, like throwing up. One time, this was during the pandemic, it was not related to COVID. I did not have COVID, but I went to this witchcraft store that shall not be named because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing them, but I had been there before, and it has a really chaotic energy. But I needed to get a tarot deck, and that was one of the few places that was sort of open. They weren't really officially open, but I went there because I needed a Rider-Waite deck, and I knew that they had one. And I went there, and this woman was outside who worked there. She was smoking a cigarette. She had not great energy, and I went to go open the gate to go down the steps into this place, and she's like, what do you think you're doing? Like, we're closed right now. But they weren't. They were open, but they were closed to people. And I was like, yo, I need a tarot deck. I will give you money. Here, take my money. Like, can you just go in there and get me a deck? And she was like, no, we're closed. And then this guy came out, and he's like, oh, what do you need? And I was like, I need a tarot deck. And after I brought the tarot deck home, I cleansed it. But then I got sick. Like, I got physically sick. I was like throwing up for no reason at all, no medical reason. And I had a really bad headache. So I had to do the Malocchio removal on myself and really cleanse that tarot deck. That's one of the experiences that kind of stand out in my mind. Is like, yeah, that was definitely from that energy of that place. And they have a lot of great stuff, but just chaotic, man. Like, sometimes you gotta like open up the windows and air it out, and I'm not gonna go there anymore. But even in other places, like other crystal shops in New York City that I've been to, even great ones, like Namaste Bookshop, for example, on 14th Street. My favorite crystal shop is Crystal's Garden. I talked about that in my last live, and how when my psychic abilities really opened up right before the pandemic, I was kind of freaking out. So I went there and I was like, yo, you guys, you need to help me out. I'm freaking out right now. And they helped me out. But yeah, even in Namaste bookshops and even in Crystal's Garden, sometimes I'll go in there and I will start sweating. I don't know if it's like all the different types of crystals together. What I think is it's like, there's a lot of different energetically potent, high frequency, high energy items and things like crystals and talismans and different things all together in a really small space. And that is, I don't know, raises the temperature of the space. Like, this would happen to me in the summer, in the winter, fall, spring. It didn't matter what season it was or what I was wearing. I always end up like sweating in there. So energy is real, and you just want to be really protective of yourself, your home, your space, and the different places that you go to. Those are some of my spiritual protection tips, part 2. If you have any questions about spiritual protection, let me know. These are things that anybody can do, and I recommend anybody and everybody do. And you can also check out the last live that I did on spiritual protection, because I talk about like how the spiritual world is very diverse. There's a lot of different entities and spirits, different kinds of spirits. Most people are not fluent enough to be able to differentiate between that. Not everyone is a psychic medium, and there's even different levels of abilities that people have and how they perceive that and how they navigate that world. But for the most part, most people are not that tapped into it, but we all have energy, and we're all human beings on earth who are also souls living in a physical body. So these are tips that can help protect you from any weird energy that is not seen but can be definitely felt. And these are also practices that either come from my background in Italian American and Sicilian American folk magic. And these are also things that I've learned from other practitioners of indigenous shamanism. And I know what it looks like when you are swimming in the deep end and you're not doing these things. Like, I had very intimate experiences with that even recently over the past couple years, where I was like, oh, this is scary. Because I've been building up my spiritual protection, my awareness, my intuition, especially over the last 4 years. I would say October 2019 was when my abilities started to open up a lot more. But I've seen what it looks like when people they may be psychically very gifted, and they may be very in tune with the spiritual world, but they're not cleaning their house. They've got shit everywhere. They're not doing the energetic hygiene stuff that I'm recommending here. They're not meditating. They're not journaling. They're not reflecting. It gets scary. That's how negative energies and entities can come into your space and have a really negative impact on you. And if you want to learn more about negative entities, I recommend reading Sister of Darkness, which is written by Rachel Stavis, who is a multi-denominational exorcist. And she talks about all of those different types of entities. But there's one particular type of negative entity that can shapeshift into whatever you want it to look like. And it can tell you like, oh, I'm good, I'm this, I'm whatever, but really it's a negative entity that's having a really negative impact on your life. So I have seen what that looks like and what that feels like, and it's not good. I just recommend you cleanse your house, cleanse your space, be mindful of what you're bringing into your space and all of that, and who you're allowing into your physical space. Be really discerning about who you are like intimate with. When you're that close with someone physically and also spiritually and emotionally, you just want to be trusting your intuition and really using a lot of discernment. There's nothing wrong with just waiting and feeling out the vibes that you get from someone, because when you're letting someone touch you, and when you're physically intimate with that person, their energy is also having an effect on you. So just be really discerning with that as well. And just be mindful. Be mindful of your own energy, your own space. And the other thing I recommend as well with these practices is to practice grounding yourself on a regular basis. Grounding yourself in nature, going out in nature, spending time in nature, even if you're just going for a walk every day. May sound really woo-woo, but hugging a tree, I know that's maybe totally out there for some people, but if you've ever done it, you probably know, like, wow, this is really feel-good vibes. I recommend also connecting with the tree first and being like, hey, this is me, and then maybe hugging the tree. And then if I do that, I always pour out some water from my water bottle as like an offering, like, thank you for exchanging energy with me. But that's a really powerful way to ground your energy, especially if you're feeling really chaotic or you're feeling like shit. Try hugging a tree, honestly. Nature is really powerful. We are part of nature. When we're able to be grounded, and when we're grounded in nature and grounded in ourselves, we can trust our intuition so much better. And that's where you will get to know what is my energy and what is energy that's not mine coming into my space. The other thing I recommend on a regular basis, this is like my advice for everybody, but especially if you're getting into folk magic or your spiritual gifts are opening up, meditate every day, especially in the morning. When you first wake up, try not to start scrolling through your phone and getting lots of input into your brain, especially when you're first waking up, because your brain is really sensitive and your energy is really sensitive. So what I recommend is waking up, doing what you got to do, and then meditating for at least 5 to 10 minutes first thing in the morning. And then I also recommend journaling every day. So between those two practices, meditating on a daily basis and journaling, you're going to really get to know your own energy. And plus, meditating has like a range of different benefits that are well documented. And it's just really good for your overall health and well-being. And it will also help you to just be like, this is my energy. I know what my energy feels like. I know what I feel like when I'm grounded, and I know what I feel like when something or someone is affecting me. So that I really recommend. I know also what it's like to see somebody who is really deep in the astral realm of the deep, dark spiritual depths, and they don't meditate and they're not grounded. It's not good. It's inviting a lot of negative energy into your life, and it's really hard for those people to be able to discern what is a positive, helpful, healthy energy, like a higher being, and what is a negative, lower being. Because negative entities, the more sophisticated ones, they'll be like, oh, I'm a certain deity, or I'm a certain spirit, I'm like your friend, I'm a benevolent force, but it's really not. And that if that person's not grounded enough and they're dabbling in things that they either are experienced with or they're not, and they don't have that basic foundation of protection, it can get like really crazy and really chaotic and ultimately have a negative impact. So these are the things that I recommend for everybody. Meditating every day. Journaling is great because then you get to know your own thoughts and you can figure out a lot of different things. I recommend gratitude journaling, especially when you wake up in the morning. You can write down your dreams as well, but I also recommend that you write down all the things that you're grateful for, because gratitude is one of the highest like vibrations of energy that we can have, especially if you're trying to manifest something new in your life or accomplish certain goals, or you're going through any change or transition. Having gratitude for where you are right now, what you have in your life right now, is a really great practice, especially if you're trying to call in new energy into your life. So that is what I would recommend for everybody, but especially if your psychic intuition is opening up, or you feel like you're going through a spiritual awakening, or you're just becoming a lot more attuned and sensitive to energy around you. That's what I would recommend on a regular basis for everyone. The nature, the energy of certain places is really potent, especially if it's where you're from. I'm from New Jersey. I'm not in New Jersey right now, but I grew up being really deeply connected to nature and the land. I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey, but where I grew up for most of my upbringing, there were woods behind my house. And I just always wanted to be in the woods. I was totally an OG, like, forest witch. I just wanted to run around the woods. But of course, my parents were like, no, that's dangerous. But now I love to be in the woods. You're really deeply connected to the nature and the land of where you're from, and being mindful of your impact that you have on your environment as well. But we're part of nature. So if you're feeling emotional or chaotic or just not feeling great, spending time in nature, that'll help. For some people, if you're like near a body of water and you look at a lake or a river, the ocean is really awesome depending on where you are. If you're by the beach, there's a lot naturally going on with the waves and the air. People have done research on how this impacts your well-being for a bunch of scientific reasons I can't articulate, but I just know when I go to the beach and I look at the waves, I'm like, oh, okay, I just feel really grounded. Or if I'm sitting at the base of a tree, like on the roots of a tree, that's something I used to do when I lived in New York City and there wasn't a lot of nature around, I would walk to a park and sit on the roots of a tree and hug the tree. Even if people were, a person hugging a tree in New York City is one of the least weird things that's going on. So it's like, I didn't really care. I was like, I have to do this for my mental and spiritual well-being. So do what you gotta do. But even just sitting in the grass, like just sit, meditate in the grass for 5 to 10 minutes. You will feel better and you'll feel more calm, grounded, connected. And if you're going through a period of your life like change, transition, or you're looking for guidance, you'd be amazed. Nature has everything that we need on this earth. That's why we need to really band together and I don't want to say save the earth because the earth is going to do its thing with or without us, but we do need to save humanity being able to live on this earth because it's getting to a point where climate change is real. It's having a very real, scary impact. And luckily, there are regenerative forms of agriculture and there's ways that we as human beings who have always lived in harmony with the earth and nature, especially in a spiritual way, some of the ancient spiritual practices that human beings were doing were always connected with the land and with nature. And it wasn't until we got into this industrial revolution period where we became really disconnected from nature, and now it's having a devastating impact on the earth and all of us. But you'd be amazed when you're in nature, the signs that you get from animals or insects. Like for me, seeing butterflies is always a beautiful thing for me. That's one of my signs that I always get. You just see certain things in nature and it has an impact on you, and it can be metaphorically really powerful, or you could see a particular animal and then look up what is the spiritual meaning of that animal according to different cultures and gain insight from that. So being in nature is really powerful, grounding, and it's also powerful form of spiritual protection overall for your overall like spiritual protection, maintenance. That's gonna help you because the best spiritual protection practices are proactive. Every single day you're building up this powerful immunity, and then you don't have issues. Then you don't have to deal with crazy stuff. And you'll also be able to discern what is my energy, what is normal, baseline, grounded for me, and what is some weird stuff coming in. When I lived in New York City, I had a lot of anxiety. This was like before the pandemic when I was like working really hard. I was super burnt out. I was really anxious. I was emotionally way more chaotic than I am now. And it was hard for me to differentiate what is my energy and what are other people's energy. But now I know. And I do all of these things. I'm recommending I do this on a regular basis. So that's why I'm recommending it. And like I said, I've seen what it looks like. I've experienced what it's like when I didn't do these things, but I've also observed how bad it can get if you are not doing these things and you're dabbling with stuff in the spiritual realm that you might be really well versed at. You might be a great swimmer in the ocean, but if you're still swimming with sharks, it can get dangerous. The ocean's really powerful, but it's also to be respected, like all forms of nature. And the spiritual world is part of nature. It's super natural, but it is to still be respected and approached with respect and care and caution. So those are my tips for spiritual protection. This is everyday things to start implement on a regular basis for proactive spiritual protection. So if you have any other questions about spiritual protection, you can DM me or you can post them in the comments below. Let me know what questions you have. If you have any stories that you want to share with me, I always love to hear that. And yeah, let me know what questions you have and I will answer them as best I can. Thank you so much to everyone who joined me live and anybody who's watching the recording. I wish you all of the divine protection as we move forward into this spooky thin veil season and all year round, all the time. An affirmation to tell yourself is, I am divinely protected. I am always safe with me. I'm protected no matter what. You can have a whole bunch of different affirmations for that you can say on a regular basis. And that's what I'm wishing for all of you. Health, wealth, and happiness to you. And I wish you all the divine protection that is in the universe. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.